everyone. Welcome to another episode of Leaders Podcast. My name's Mike LaCorte and I'm your host. Today, I'm joined by Katherine Mayer from Austin in Texas. During Leaders Podcast, I get the opportunity to speak to some of the most influential leaders in the investigation and intelligence space. Welcome, Katherine. Pleasure to have you on board. Would you mind just introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, Mike. Thanks so much. Happy to be here. My name is Katherine Mayer. I am a criminal defense investigator. So I exclusively work in the criminal defense field by way of actually death penalty mitigation. So my way into this field was interesting. Sounds like it's not as typical as some of the other people that become investigators after retiring, I think, from law enforcement or just other journeys. But my passion always really was within the criminal justice field. So I got my undergraduate degree in psychology with a behavioral forensics concentration. And then I got my graduate degree in forensic psychology. And from there, I went into death penalty mitigation. I kind of just fell into it. And I can explain a little bit more about what that it is. Basically, when you have a death penalty case, you have guilt, innocence, and sentencing, right? And so if the client or defendant is convicted of capital murder, it goes into what would be the sentencing phase. And the investigation that is conducted to present that evidence in the sentencing phase is what a mitigation specialist does. So essentially, it's the biological, sociological, psychological background of that individual. So you're helping explain how they got to this point. At this point, the jury has convicted them of capital murder, and now it's your job to essentially save their life, because on the table is a life or death sentence. So all of the evidence that's collected, we collect records from the day that they're born until tomorrow. We talk to every family member, every teacher, preacher, neighbor that's ever come in contact with them, that helps put the puzzle piece of their life together, that helps get presented to that jury, that helps humanize them, explain how they got here, and is hopefully going to spare their life by a jury.
So is it a criminal defense, like an appeal? You're appealing the decision that's already been, no, it's not? Go and explain it.
Still at the trial phase. So before they're even, as someone gets indicted for capital murder and then the attorney is preparing for the trial, we are working alongside them all pre-trial up until that point of getting to the trial. So all of this happens at the same time, essentially, or within a reasonable amount of time, where the conviction happens and then the sentencing happens. So when you ever watch court TV and you're watching the trial, you're watching the guilt, innocence, and then at some point that person gets sentenced to whatever it is they're sentenced to, and that is where that evidence gets put on.
So you're defending, say, a capital murder case, knowing fully well that your client potentially did commit murder, and you're trying to gauge whether it's murder justifiable for the death penalty or murder justifiable for imprisonment. Are you looking at, where are you put, because this is a moral compass question now, right? So this is where, which is interesting, right? So where are you positioning yourself, Katherine?
Well, so for me, I am completely against the death penalty. At the point in which someone is facing capital murder, it's not justifiable. It has to be the most heinous of all crimes. It's supposed to be reserved for those particular crimes. There are, you can get a whole conversation about whether that's actually applied appropriately. But for the sake of this conversation, you are always, as a mitigation specialist, seeking life.
Right. That's your target, right?
Correct.
Right. Are there cases that you turn down to defend?
Nope.
You'll take whatever's out there.
Yep. I have you can't convince me otherwise that the death penalty is an adequate punishment for any human being. And I've seen some pretty awful people. I left Miami because of one of them, but we won't get into that story today.
How do people find you then? How do they find you to pull you in your skill sets and your services? How does someone find you?
So all of my clients are attorneys.
Right.
And
Okay.
so it's a very small niche area in the law, and there aren't a lot of us.
Mm,
So word of mouth, essentially. And, I'm sure we'll get into how connected I am
mm.
through associations and such. But yeah, I don't really have to do a whole lot of marketing because it's a
Sure.
word of mouth situation.
One more question around this, and then I'll move topic. But how many capital murder cases are there on average a year where
In
you
the
are?
country,
Well, do you cover the whole country, or do you just represent the state you're in?
so it's an interesting question because things are shifting,
Right.
and even in Texas, who loves to kill people, we we aren't. Some of our counties that are a little bit more liberal leaning
Mm,
are not seeking death on a lot of capital murders anymore. In Texas, we have something called a mini capital, which is an automatic life sentence. So if someone is convicted of a capital crime, but
mm.
the death penalty is not on the table, then they will face an automatic life sentence. And that sentencing phase that I was just talking about is no longer applicable. It's just an
Right.
auto life sentence handed down by a judge.
So numbers?
Oh, some numbers. Right. I actually don't know the answer to that, but my firm, who we have about 9 investigators that are a combination of fact investigators and mitigation specialists. We only have about 5 in the state of Texas out of 150 cases that we handle. Dallas and Houston are still fairly active, but I mean, on average, we're putting about, I want to say, like 10 to death every year. I mean, actually, execution are around 10 a year, but I don't know how many are actually being sought after. And that number
Sure.
is probably a little wonky to begin with because there are other things that factor into it.
Yeah, understood. And when you're retained in these challenges, and it looks like a challenging investigation from start to finish. How now I'll use the word successful are you? I know the outcome is life or death, but how successful in terms of taking these cases on is your investigation? The result helped.
Well, so far we are all but one case that I've had.
Oh.
Yeah, has received a death sentence, and it was a federal case, and it was just the odds were kind of stacked against us. But the goal is also to get these cases resolved out of prior to even going to trial. You don't want to go to trial with death on the table. So we get them resolved through our mitigation reports and, plea deals.
Yeah, right, understood. You're the first criminal defense investigator in this space that I've actually had a conversation with. I find it hugely challenging and interesting, actually, and I could keep going on, but let's move on to your role now. And you spoke lightly on associations. Talk to me about some of the associations in our industry, some that you're a member of, some that you're active in, and then I just want to understand that process a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So I started off in my career really wanting to be, there were probably a few years there where I wasn't a part of any associations and completely isolated and on this island, right? And then I eventually realized that I needed to become a part of the associations. So I learned about the ones, I've kind of joined anything that came along, not really understanding that I was in a different place in this industry because I am a licensed private investigator, and we do conduct a ton of fact investigations for guilt innocence purposes, but there is still a very big gap between what we do and what a lot of other private investigators do in the space that aren't completely specialized in criminal defense. And so the associations that I am now a part of are very strategically chosen to be within my space and aren't necessarily like the World Organization of Detectives and that kind of thing. So I am the co-chair of our national association for the Sentencing Advocates and Mitigation Specialists. That acronym is NASAMS, and it is the longest one I've ever come up with a longer name for it. But it is a subdivision of NLADA, which is the National Legal Aid and Defender Association.
Sure.
And then we have, I'm a part of a lot of the lawyer associations. So TCDLA, which is the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, then the Austin chapter, I'm a part of both of those, NACDL, which is the National Association for Criminal Defense Lawyers. So I've got a group of NAPD, probably about 10 of them that I'm associated with. And then I sit on the committee of the TCDLA, which is the Lawyers Association in Texas. And as I said, I'm a co-chair of our national organization for the mitigation specialists.
So sit as a co-chair. I've done my time in associations and I still continue to do so, right? And I know it's, non-paid, voluntary. Talk to me why you would devote your time, effort, and energy to providing, say, something back in the industry, and what, we all know the challenges, right, in standing for positions. Explain to me a little bit about why you chose to do that.
I would like to be considered a thought leader in this space. I've dedicated my entire life to exactly what I'm doing right now. I've done nothing else. And an example of that is that we just established what our standards and our ethical guidelines are for being a mitigation specialist. And I want to be able to provide this knowledge and pass it down. I want to be a part of the things that we're doing to change and grow this field. Mitigation hasn't been around forever like other industries have. So I feel like it's a really important thing for me to be able to be a part of in order to shape and grow our industry.
Yeah. And I think that some of the skill sets that a routine private investigator or professional investigator use and utilize, like you said, fact investigating, do they cross over in the type of work that you do, or do you need a unique type of skill set?
I think, so you mean from fact investigation to mitigation or other types of investigation?
No. Yeah. Normal private investigator skills that are used, open source, research, deep dive stuff, surveillance, investigations, inquiries, interview statements, all the usual that a private sector investigator would do. Are those skills transferable into what you do, or what do you do that's different?
So I think what we do that's different, or there are lots of transferable skills, right? I think what sets us apart and what I really try to strive at is to be extremely knowledgeable about the law and what the attorney needs are within my industry. I think that it's not as easy to go from surveillance jobs to criminal defense investigator. There's definitely similar skill sets, and forensic interviewing is an important technique that needs to be utilized. All of the other things like OSINT, we do all of that stuff on the level that helps move a criminal defense case forward. However, there are nuances to the criminal justice system and understanding the legal system in a way that helps us elevate our skill set and our, contribution to the attorney in a way that makes us more of a strategic partner as opposed to just a vendor.
Yeah, good answer. What's the most challenging part then of doing what you do?
Getting paid.
There's all of us right there, but yeah, speaking for the whole industry. But no, in terms of exactly what you do, what's the challenging piece?
I think the most challenging piece is I've been doing this for over 15 years, and I still get nervous going and cold knocking on doors. Right? You never know what's on the other side of the door. And we go out and we're knocking on doors in neighborhoods that, aren't great neighborhoods. And we interview complaining witnesses and victims of crimes, and we don't know how well we'll be received by them. we have to continue to take those chances and try to talk. I mean, the content that we're dealing with is pretty sensitive. And in a murder, when you're trying to speak with the family members, should it be applicable in that case, that is an extremely challenging bit that needs a lot of thought behind some of, just the sensitivities surrounding it, cultural competency. I think that that's something that we all continue to struggle with and brainstorm with in order to make sure that we are doing right by our client, who is not the favorite person in the room, and by the and by potential victims.
And you've got full access to the client during this time?
Definitely. Yeah, we visit. That's step one. We visit our client before we do anything else.
That sounds challenging. So, talk to me. What would you say to a young investigator that's listening to this and thinking, "Wow, I didn't realize that type of investigation, criminal type investigations exist. I'm really interested in this, and I'd like to get involved." What advice would you give a young investigator looking to come into the market?
Yeah, I think I get calls like this all the time. So the things that I tell people that are looking to, I mean, maybe you've been an established investigator, but you really want to learn criminal defense. I kind of get that a lot. And then I get students who are interested in learning about the field. And the things that I tell them are, it really does start with associations. I really think that there's something to be said for, it's not just about the networking. It's not just about going to try to get more business, right? It's really about not being on that island anymore. I think if you want to excel at your craft, you need to know what's going on in the rest of the industry. Without access to associations, you really don't have anything you have no one to bounce ideas off of. You have really no reference point for where the industry is as a whole. I think with the way that policy changes, I think those kinds of things we learn about prior to them actually changing, what's on the horizon, any rate changes, laws that are going to affect our industry. All of those things come from, for me, the associations and the listservs and the networking and my ability to be able to reach out to people that I trust, that I have accumulated over time, that I can call and use as a resource.
Yeah, great answer. In terms of criminal defense, how is the private-public synergy? Do you liaise with law enforcement? Do you sit in a different camp compared to a lot of private investigators I speak to from all over the world that sometimes have real challenges in getting this law enforcement, private-public sector relationship open? You sit in a different space though. So how is your relationship with law enforcement?
Not great.
Okay.
I don't think law enforcement respects me very much. Fair enough, but we're trying to pick apart their entire case. So what they do, we're doing the opposite of, right?
Sure.
So no, we do not associate with them. We do not speak with them. I have nothing but love for law enforcement. The job is necessary, but it's not a part of the job description that we speak with them.
Sure. So in terms of sharing data and information, let's say if you found some evidence through inquiry, through your interviews and your statements, and you uncover something that's, let's say, substantial enough to report through the system, would you alert law enforcement to say, look, this potentially could pull apart your case? Or is that you just leave it for the sort of judicial system to take its course?
So the way that works is we report to the attorney, and then the attorney presents that evidence to the prosecutor, who then makes the determination on how to utilize that information.
Sure. Okay. No problem at all. So you keep a clear distance from any official investigation that's taken place and stopped, actually. By the time you're involved, that investigation's finished anyway, right?
For the most part. I mean, it's still ongoing, and we get new discovery all the time leading up to trial, but for the most part, we don't have a reciprocity here.
Sure.
We don't have to turn over our information. It's considered work product. So
Sure.
I report it to the attorney and they can withhold it. Let's say we don't even want to alert prosecutors to our, golden egg here, and we want to, wait until we go to trial and drop the bomb there. Then that's also just a strategic move that we determine or we make at the time that we find the information.
And that's completely allowed. You can wait till trial to drop nuggets of information that you found without alerting the other side.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. That's interesting. I've learned something new again. Talk to me about the trend.
In Texas.
Oh, in Texas. Okay, in Texas. The trends now. How are you seeing investigation trends in your sector developing? Are there any, with the rise of all of the other tools that are available that criminal networks use, with the rise of AI, deepfake, and other methods, are those crossing over into what you do as well?
Yeah, I think they are. And I am an advocate. I like the tools that are being introduced. I think that it's a slippery slope. And I think that while they can advance in certain areas of our practice, they can't replace it. So I don't feel all that threatened by it. But I do believe that it can elevate some of the things that we do in the way of strategic ideas. For me personally, development of the business, and sometimes report writing. As long as you're not disclosing personal information or case specific information, I think that there are things that we can utilize it for to help us in our practice. Sometimes I'll give it a general idea about a case that I might have and maybe the best approach to interview if it's something super nuanced, and I've gotten some really great ideas. And then, I'm actually utilizing it in my next business venture. And so I think that that's going to help elevate where we are there as well.
Next business venture. Go on. What is it?
It's, I'm not going to say too much, but it has to do with the voir dire process and how we can expedite being able to accumulate potential juror information.
Okay. What skills or what attributes make a good criminal defense investigator? If you were looking to appoint a number 2 Katherine Mayer, who would that be, and what would you look for?
I think I think you have to be born with that inquisitive side. I've probably at this point in my career I've hired close to 50 different investigators. My team is solid now for a while. And what makes them all really great is the passion behind the work. Because, this isn't your run-of-the-mill investigative firm. I think you really have to believe in what you're doing in order to be good at this kind of work. And that inquisitive mind, the ability to really try to answer the questions and do the research about the law. None of us are lawyers. So what sets us apart from other firms that do criminal defense is our ability to bridge the gap between the investigator and the lawyer. And I think that comes with really researching, some of the statutes that surround the crimes that we're dealing with. And you got to be a good writer. You have to be a people person. You have to be a good forensic interviewer. Rapport building is just the most important thing in our field, not only with our clients, but is that we have to go out and talk to. Yeah.
And what's next for your team and your group? What's the vision for the next chapter? What are you looking to achieve?
I want to continue to grow in a way that still remains authentic and doesn't compromise work product. I think the most important thing for me is to make sure that we are still delivering consistent and valuable information to the attorneys that we work for, because we really care about the work, and to not overextend ourselves. So a healthy growth there. The new jury platform that I'm going to launch towards the end of the year. It's almost done being developed. And then, just continuing to influence this industry or this field specifically in the right direction.
Fantastic, Katherine. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Katherine's details, email, website coming up on the screen. And if any of you budding criminal defense investigators need some support or help, or there's a client out there that's on the wrong end of the law, Katherine Mayer, Mayer Consulting, reach out. Thank you, Katherine. Been a pleasure speaking to you. Leaders Podcast.
Thanks so much, Mike.